This is a full guide to improving your sleep, sleeping better. I'm not going to waste much time and have a super long, dragged out intro, so let's get directly into it. First of all, why should you listen to me? I really went from not being able to sleep more than 6 to 6.5 hours every single night. This was just, I guess it'd be 6 months ago by now. It was unreal. Um, I could do everything right, it felt like at the time, and yeah, I wouldn't be able to even, uh, you know, get a 7 hour night's sleep as a teenager when you require really 8 or more hours to grow and function properly. And of course, there's going to be nights where you get a little bit less. That's not a huge deal. That's just kind of the standard metric used, and that can vary from person to person slightly. Like for me, there's some nights where I'll get 7.5, and it's not a big deal. I feel completely fine. But 6.5 every night. Even if you're really trying to apply good sleep hygiene habits, it does suck, and it was really discouraging. But I applied some of these. I was consistent. I was persistent in my applications of a lot of these methods and supplementation and whatnot, and it really did help. I did most of this research on my own, and so it was kind of an independent study. I was really my own case study for this entire process. And there was lots of trial and error. There were some things that worked greatly and that I implement to this day, and there were a lot of things that I, kicked to the curb almost right away. And you could really say that my insomnia kind of made me a sleep nerd. And like I said, 6 to 6.5 hours was the max limit I was pushing, right? A lot of times it'd be 4 or 5. So my, little bout with insomnia made me into this sleep nerd. And I'm not a sleep expert, I'm not a doctor, but I certainly would say that I have a pretty good level of knowledge on it. And so I want to share that with you guys in this video. First of all, we got the little picture of 4-time Mr. Olympia bodybuilder Jay Cutler hitting the knapsack. Just shows how essential sleep is for muscle, for recovery, especially for athletes. So just thought I'd include that little picture. I don't know, you know, trying to have some fun here, I guess. But yeah, part one is going to be a morning and night routine evaluation and kind of how you should set up your mornings and your evenings for success and stabilizing your circadian rhythm, which I'm going to get into very shortly here. Part two is going to be how exercise and nutrition play a role in your sleep. So, how much should you be exercising? What type of exercise is good? What should you be eating? How long before bed should I be eating? Right, all those good things. I'm going to talk about those in the second section of this presentation. Part three is a supplementation guide for your sleep. So, a lot of people ask, like, what type of supplement should I take? I know I was big on this and like thinking that supplements for sleep were some sort of miracle thing, miracle drug, when really that's probably the 20%. Everything else is the 80% that's going to really drive results. And this is really the 20. Or, I mean, everything else is the 20%, the basics that are going to drive results. And this is the 80 that gets you those other 20%. But they're still good. And the other 20%, especially when it comes to sleep, is it's a big portion. It's a big deal because that's 80% of your good night's sleep and 20% suck versus 100%, right? Or very close to it. Bedroom environment guide. So we're going to kind of talk about how you should set up your bedroom in order that you sleep well. So making sure it's cold enough, it's dark enough, right? All things that have been proven to increase sleep quality, duration, consistency in your sleep and whatnot. So we're going to get into that. And part five is going to be some other methods for sleeping better. These aren't like super niche, unknown methods, but I don't really think they fit into one of these categories, and perhaps they do, but they can definitely fit into their own as well. So that's going to be the fifth part of this, and then we're going to have a little outro, maybe a little discussion at the end. We'll see, kind of going with the flow here. But yeah, let's get into it. So, Part one, morning and night routines and the circadian rhythm. So, three things you should do every single morning, right? No matter what, regardless, you should get 15 minutes of sunlight. All right. So, this, I know a lot of people have jobs where they have to go early in the morning and before sunrise, right? And so I understand that, and that's where I would make an exception. It's not 100% essential, and you can do things to help with this. We're going to talk about that in a sec with the cold shower. But if you can, 15 minutes of sunlight is enough time so that you can get the light into your eyes, and this will stabilize your circadian rhythm for the day. So your circadian rhythm is like a 24-hour, I mean, it says right here in the chart, a body clock that your body naturally has built in to regulate your sleep wake cycles, when you're at your highest energy, your lowest, and a lot of other stuff too, like digestion, um, you know, muscle strength, capacity, when you're at your peak athletic ability, all these things they have to do with their circadian rhythm. But the big one that's really talked about is sleep in the circadian rhythm. So if you get sunlight upon waking, I think it's about 14 to 16 hours later, if you get enough sunlight, an apt amount, your body will naturally begin to get tired. That's just the way we are built. That's the way we're really kind of engineered, you could say. And so, yeah, the 15 minutes of sunlight is huge, right? This is a non-negotiable if you have access to it. I would also recommend that you do your most focused work in the morning, right? Because, and I'm going to get into the cortisol thing in a sec, this increases cortisol. I know a lot of people think, oh, cortisol is so bad, it's terrible, um, right? Like you don't want to have high cortisol. Well, in the morning, you don't want to have high cortisol with the wrong reasons, right? Like you're checking your phone, you're scrolling, all those things that'll be cheap sources of dopamine as well are really going to be an issue. But these are actually, this is good. This is productive because you want high cortisol in the morning from good, um, activities. Sunlight will increase cortisol, but in a good way, right? I need to keep reiterating this in a good way because so many bros on the internet with the whole, clav cortisol thing seem to really think that it's such a terrible thing, and it is if it's chronic, if you're always at high cortisol. But these things will actually help it not be chronic, not be persistent throughout the day. So 15 minutes of sunlight, doing your most focused work, and a cold shower. I would recommend building up to a 3 to 5 minute really cold shower. This is going to increase cortisol a lot, which is actually good in the morning because then later in the day you will have lower cortisol. This is what you want for most people who do most things during the day. I'll make a separate video for night shift workers probably in the future. But for most people, we're doing most of our things in the day. And then at night, we want to be asleep. So these are all going to be good things to really keep in mind. I would also add in here, wake up around the same time every day. Waking up naturally is ideal, right? So for me, I wake up naturally right now, now that school is ended, probably anywhere between 6:45 and like 7:45 right now, somewhere in that range. It'll probably go later. It'll probably be like 8 to 9 a.m. by the time the summer's over, just because that's kind of how teenagers' body clocks are designed to go to bed later and wake up later as well. But yeah, finding this like within an hour range, and we're gonna talk about going to bed at the same time. Really, what's going to do that for you is going to bed at the same time every night, though. At night, a hot shower before bed has been one of the best things for my sleep. Literally, if there's one thing, it would be a hot shower, 100%. For me, at least, right? I think no screens is also really good. And the hot shower, the science behind this before I go into the rest, basically when you get out, your core body temperature actually drops, and it does this to cool off your body from the heat. And your core body temperature needs to drop about 2 degrees for you to enter truly deep sleep. And that's obviously just an estimation. It's kind of give or take 2 degrees, but right around there. So that's going to be very productive and beneficial for your sleep, and especially your deep and REM sleep. Before bed, don't be on screens an hour before bed unless absolutely necessary. I'm going to get into the blue light glasses and things you can kind of do to, um, you could say, wean off. I don't know if that's the proper term, but wean off the side effects of this if you really truly need to be on your screens an hour or less before bed. But I think for the most part, most can just avoid this. I would also say with this is just having a darker room in general, right? Not being so stimulated by light at night. You want to have kind of a darker environment. So dim the lights, turn them off really for the most part, ideally if you can. And if you really want to be kind of a try hard about it, then also like just have candles lit or something like that, or have incandescent light bulbs if you really want to go full like try hard mode. I personally don't do that. I just try and keep the area dim at night and go to bed at the same time every night. For me, I'm going to bed really right now between 10 to 10:30, so somewhere in that, plus give or take 30 minutes, go to bed at the same time every night. I get it, you have different plans, you have different occupations throughout the day, from day to day, that might affect this. But for the most part, if you can get to bed, this is why I would say make this a realistic time. Don't be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to bed at 8 and I'm gonna wake up at 4. That's insane. It's absurd. It's not going to go well for you unless that's how your job schedule is, or there's a really, really valid excuse. But it doesn't really make any sense if you don't have to do that, right? So for me, going to bed from 10 to 10:30 and waking up between like 6:45 and 7:45 kind of makes the most sense right now because it's realistic, right? I can still do stuff at night, have fun at night without staying up too late and getting into goober degenerate activities where maybe gooning, but like no, real talk though. I feel like at night a lot of people will be like, well, I want to go to bed later, because this and that. And it's like, are you really going to do those things at night, or are you just going to end up scrolling, uh, playing video games, falling into more degenerate, lower tier activities again? So I would say choose a time that's realistic, but also not too late, unless you really need to. You work a 4 to midnight shift or something like that. Then okay, that's fair. Um, but yeah, so don't overthink that too much. Oh, and then this is the circadian rhythm. So I kind of talked about it before. But basically, this really does show, and this is for someone who wakes up, at 6 a.m., right? Like, I don't know exactly really when this person's going to bed, but I assume this is like, uh, maybe somewhere, yeah, we'll say 6 a.m. kind of adds up. But yeah, so basically, all these biological factors and more are dictated by your sleep wake schedule. So if your sleep wake schedule is out of whack, everything else will be alongside it. And there's actually been data showing that really your sleep schedule matters more than your total amount of sleep, right? So if you're maybe getting only about 7 hours of sleep a night, but you're going to bed at the exact same time every night, you're falling asleep, and you're waking up at the same time every morning, though not ideal, that's going to be better than someone who gets 8 to 9 hours, but their bedtime varies and it fluxes all over the place because your body's not going to really be predictable or your body's not gonna be able to predict when to kind of turn on certain functions and when to turn them off. And so, though I would advocate, and anyone I think would, for getting a good quantity and quality, this is just kind of something to take into consideration when talking about sleep schedule and thinking about it for yourself. Maybe, the importance of it really goes beyond what was originally thought. All right, part number two, exercise, nutrition, and the role it plays in sleep. So, first point, and this kind of goes without saying, you need to move enough throughout the day to actually sleep good, right? So if you're sedentary throughout the entirety of the day, if you're not really doing anything um, of, you know, importance in terms of movement, right? Going on walks, lifting, playing basketball, boxing, right? All things you can do that'll just get you moving throughout the day. You're not going to sleep well. I noticed that for a while I was really on this 10,000 step a day bro, type of grind. And though I think that can get a little bit obsessive in and of itself, I think it's actually it was really good for my sleep because I was always trying to get my 10,000 steps in. It was winter time, so the sun would set kind of pretty early, and so I'd be going out at like 7:30 when it was like peak darkness, right, pitch blackout, and I would go walk for like an hour, bumping music, and no one else was out there. It was actually really lit, and that's the one thing I do miss about the winter a lot. But I would do this to get my steps in, and then I would hop, get back home, chill for 30 minutes to an hour, shower and go to bed, and I would always sleep like an absolute rock. And that was actually the one thing that got me over the hump of not being able to get more than 6 hours of sleep a night. That was the catalyst that pushed me into 7, then 7.5, and 8.5 hours of sleep every single night. What I would recommend is most days, doing one hard workout plus a long walk, that will suffice. So say in the morning, you get a really good lift in, and then in the afternoon or night, you take like a 45 to 60 minute walk. Don't do it too close to bed, but relatively close. And then you read maybe a little bit, then you hop in the shower and go to bed. That's going to be very, very beneficial for your sleep. And this does matter a lot. Movement throughout the day, especially outside in the sunlight, which I'll get into later, is very, very beneficial for your sleep. Then when it comes to nutrition, don't eat less than 2 hours before bed, right? So 2 hours before bed, cut off the foods and the snacks, unless you really are hungry, then have something little. And I got a meal later on that, in this video I'll give out. It's kind of a lighter snack, but you can eat that before bed and it won't really destroy your sleep. And eating less than 2 hours before bed won't destroy your sleep necessarily. And I know there's some people who actually, if they eat right before bed, especially like a good healthy meal that's not too big or heavy, they actually just knock out and they sleep better. But you have to think about the quality of that sleep as well, right? Um, this will increase body temperature, though. It's something you gotta kind of counteract if you can't. For me, I remember in school, I'd have to be asleep by 10 if I really wanted to get enough sleep throughout the night, and I would get home from work at like 8:30 and I'd be done eating by like 9. And so I wasn't able to do this, but it didn't really affect my sleep because I took measures to decrease body temperature. But that's really the big reason why. Also, your body's digesting food in this time period as well. And that can be problematic in terms of just like, your body wants to just fully go into rest mode. And if it's got to digest and, Do all this with food as well. It can become a real issue in terms of your quality of sleep and how deep it is. Junk food in general, right? Even if you're not eating it less than 2 hours before bed, say you ate it 3 hours before, but it was like, KFC, McDonald's, Domino's Pizza, any kind of junk food though. I'm not just talking fast food. That will mess with your sleep as well. It'll mess with your quality of sleep, maybe your ability to fall asleep, right? If you kind of see stomach or digestive issues, if you eat junk food, and everyone does. That's the thing. You can say, "Oh yeah, I don't feel bad after eating, 4 slices of Domino's pizza." Maybe you don't externally, but your body's feeling it. So, um, avoid the junk food, just in general. And this applies to sleep, right? This is why junk food is such a psyop and a scam. And, it's a cheap source of dopamine. And it also messes with sleep. So, of course it does. No surprises there. But if you just learn that, well, then, stay off the junk food before bed or just in general. Supplements. Yeah, these are the 3 supplements I take. And this is actually the capsules they come in. So I got it, I got the specific brand models down to the very minute detail. This is my supplement stack for sleep. So I take all these 30 to 60 minutes before bed, usually closer to that 30 mark. So I have 0.3 milligrams or 300 micrograms of melatonin. And I know people, act like melatonin is this enemy, and they're gonna be like, well, if you stop taking it after you take it for a while, your body's not gonna be able to produce it on its own. Really, what the issue is the high doses of melatonin, right? These 5 milligram bros who pop these before bed every night, their sleep quality actually worsens. Not only that, but this is something you got to take into consideration with melatonin. Melatonin isn't, I'm pretty sure it's not FDA regulated. And so these doses can be off by a lot, right? So if you just get some random niche supplement line, you know, bottle of case of melatonin that says, oh yeah, 0.3 milligrams, it can actually be a gram or 2 or 3 grams of melatonin, right? It's insane how inaccurate these can be because they're not regulated, right? And so get a trustworthy brand. Life Extension is really good. They're trustworthy, they're legit. I've noticed myself, there'll be nights where I don't take melatonin. I just forget to, or maybe I'm on a vacation and I don't have it on hand. Although now I kind of do pack it. But yeah, there's been times where I just don't bother and I'll sleep just fine. So it's not a big deal if you take it in a micro dose. Also, take the time release melatonin. The like regular release is not going to be really that beneficial. It'll knock you out, sure, but it's not going to keep you asleep. And so these will be good because it actually mimics this dosage and with the time release actually mimics like natural melatonin release well. So that's why I recommend this over, just a regular release or the cheapo melatonin. Don't cheap out on melatonin if you're going to take it. Melatonin, though, another thing that really did help me in my sleep and improving my sleep, that was huge. Just the microdose. The higher doses didn't help. This did because it mimics real release. Sorry for the little rant about that, but there are precautions you need to take before taking melatonin. 200 to 300 milligrams of magnesium. I do Life Extension with this as well. My serving size is like 1 pill is 100 milligrams. So I take 2 to 3, sometimes 1, but usually 2 to 3 because a 250, to 300 milligram is probably really the ideal dose. Maybe even a little bit higher, 500, kind of where it maxes out in terms of its benefits and your well-being. Taking that dose consistently. Magnesium is also really good. It prevents those cramps. I don't know about you guys, but as someone who is active, right, and I guess you could say athletic, especially in sporting seasons, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I have some crazy calf cramp for like 2 to 3 minutes straight, and you're like screaming in pain, but you're not even really screaming. You're just kind of like quiet screaming. I don't know if you guys can relate, but I personally had those a lot. I got to the point where it was multiple times a night, and it was absurd. And so magnesium really helps. It's hard to find magnesium in everyday foods now because pesticides actually kill it. So this is why I would recommend that everyone supplements magnesium, ideally taking it before bed because it also is a sleep aid. Um, and even I noticed there was a night where I didn't take it. I also hadn't really hydrated that well. I was at this culture conference event for my friends like church group, and we were down in like Ohio, and so we were in a hotel. I just didn't bother taking it. I'd packed some, but I was so tired. You're walking around all day, chopping it up with the females, being the goat of game, right? Because that's what we all are. We're all, you know, game masters. But no, so I just didn't take it, and I woke up twice with cramps. So you know, watch out with the magnesium. Um, you know, not taking it because I think consistently taking that is going to be huge just for overall health. Anyway, glycine. So I've taken this. I took it pretty consistently for a while a few months ago. That stuff would knock me out. I remember I took it. This was during that same time period. It was a couple days before. It was the night before I went to culture conference, and I took that, and I fell asleep at like 8:30 and didn't wake up until 5:30. So 9 hours straight of sleeping. Just was out like a light. Um, yeah, glycine legit, and it's not gonna harm you. It's a natural, supplement. I would recommend. This is the one I have. It's like the Now. I don't know. It's not Life Extension, but whatever. I took the powder one. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, 3 grams. That's a good dosage. And I gotta get consistently back on this. I think tonight I'll probably take it. Cause man, oh my gosh. I mean, you are out like a freaking light. Um, don't overdo supplements. It's a huge thing. I was kind of on that in my, insomniac phase where I was trying everything. I was taking like 6 supplements at once. I remember I was taking melatonin, magnesium, glycine, 5-HTP, valerian, and drinking chamomile tea on top of that. That's excessive. That was insane. Um, Taking all those supplements at once will worsen your sleep. Valerian root is a good supplement as well. It smells terrible. It smells so bad. Like open that capsule, it's gonna reek. So it's almost like you gotta open it real quick and then close it before it stinks up the house. Not the house, but the area you're in. But that stuff it does knock you out. You will have some weird dreams on it though, I think. But it doesn't really matter. Like dreams, it's not a big deal. You're not gonna get nightmares. Most likely not. So no biggie. 5-HTP, a good supplement as well. It's like a brain thing. I don't know. Um, I'm not really a scientist, but I stopped taking it. But yeah, I mean, it kind of helped. And I forgot to add it, but chamomile tea is insane. If you don't have, a terrible bladder like me, I don't really have a terrible bladder, but I'm very sensitive to like nighttime hydration. So chamomile tea, like 30 minutes before bed, will absolutely put you to sleep. And I do wish I could drink it because it just knocks you out. But what I noticed is that when I would take it, because chamomile, it is a mild diuretic, which means that it'll kind of make you piss. I was waking up at night to piss, which is just something out of the ordinary for me and for a lot of teenagers in general, and sometimes multiple times a night. And I was finding it hard to fall back asleep afterwards, and so it was kind of just detrimental to my sleep. But if you're one of those people that can wake up to take a leak and it doesn't really affect you, then that's fine. But something to keep in mind with chamomile. All right, bedroom environment. How should you set up your room for optimal good a good night's sleep? First of all, we really need to identify our goal with how we want our bedroom to be. We want a dark room. So the cold room lowers your body temperature, keeps you asleep, and it also betters your deep and REM sleep. I know this is hard even for me right now in the summertime to get this. There'll be times where I wake up and I'm, just like super hot and, I'm like about to have a dang heat stroke. But, if you can, keep it cold. Dark room. Dark is huge. You don't want light shining through your window. This is why I would say first step, get blackout curtains, 100%. Buy those. It's a huge investment. It's not very expensive, but has really good ROI because it'll stop the light, during sunrise from shining into your crib. And if you're someone who doesn't have to wake up at 5 a.m. like me, um, you wake up after sunrise. Have your fan on and open windows if necessary. In terms of like a cold room, right? These will help. These will be a great aid towards keeping your room cold throughout the night. I also would recommend, and this is something I did, was I would turn on my fan like an hour before bed. So I would turn it on and then I'd close my bedroom door so that I would walk in and the room would be cold. Or I would open my window in the wintertime when it's like 0 degrees outside. Open that for an hour and like your room is gonna be freezing cold and you're gonna fall asleep super fast. So it was great. I would recommend doing that. If it's not summertime, it's not blazing hot like it is right now. Um, Wear a sleep mask and make sure your room is just completely dark. It's void of light, completely. So yeah, sleep mask. I bought one of these like silk ones, and they're really nice. They're cheap as well, so don't say like, oh, I can't get it. It's too much money. It's a BS excuse because you can get a cheap one for like a few bucks. And if you want like a silk one, I don't know, it was like 15 bucks something. So it's not a big deal. Make sure your room is completely dark. Like I even have an alarm clock and a digital clock, and it's in red, numbering or the number display. I guess the display is red, and I put it face down at night, so it's just completely dark. I don't want any light at all. This will improve sleep quality. It'll keep you asleep as well. A weighted blanket is also a super good investment. I asked for one for Christmas. I don't really know how much they are, but they're a little more on the expensive side. This is going to be one of those bigger investments. Get it about 10% of your body weight. So for me, when I got it, I was like 155. Now I'm like 160, 165, but it's 15 pounds. So it's about 10% of my body weight. You want to make sure it's not too heavy, but also not too light. 10% sweet spot. Um, it's a really good investment. It really did help my sleep, especially quality of sleep. Like you just knock out with that thing, bro. It's crazy. So yeah, definitely keep that on you. Make sure your bed is really only for sleeping as well, right? Like scrolling in bed, even reading in bed, working in bed, especially working in bed. Oh my gosh. Like if you're using your bed for other things than sleeping, your brain is going to associate the bed with a bunch of these different things, And especially like working, it's going to associate with, overthinking and having your brain completely on. And you don't want that. You want, when you lay your head on the pillow, your body, your brain is just kind of like, okay, now it's time to fall asleep, and it has that association. Um, so yeah, those are my tips when it comes to your bedroom environment. Like, you know, some people will go overboard and be like, make sure your entire bedroom is only reserved for sleeping. You know, that's insane. Like you're going, a bedroom for a lot of people is a desk. It's a workplace. It's a place where they just kind of get to chill. Um, so it's just kind of excessive, right? Like I have a desk right next to my bed where I'm recording right now, and it's for recording and reading and journaling, right? And writing and all these things. But it's not my bed, and my bed is only for sleeping. That's what really matters. All right, so here's some other methods for sleeping better. Um, no caffeine past noon or 10 hours before bed. So this is a huge one, and this one really does matter a lot. This is up there in terms of like sleep schedule as the most important thing. If you have caffeine, so a caffeine, like the half life of it is about 10 hours, pretty sure. And so you want to make sure that you're not having it. I would say just say past noon as a general rule for most, unless you're going to bed at like 7 p.m., then do like 10 hours before bed, which would be like 9 a.m. And so this is going to just help your adenosine because caffeine it blocks adenosine, which is why you get that rush and you get that on alert feeling. But adenosine helps you fall asleep, right? It builds up throughout the day. That's what actually, yeah, it does help you fall asleep. So caffeine blocks this, so you don't want this in your system before bed. And when you have caffeine, don't overdo the dose, right? If you have a 400 milligram espresso, um, even if it's at 10 a.m. and it's not noon, when you get in bed, you're still gonna have like 200, 100, 200 milligrams of caffeine in your system, which is going to affect the quality of your sleep, deep in REM sleep. Um, blue light glasses, really good investment. I want to talk about these. So I got those for Christmas as well. This is when I was going on my sleep nerd arc, and those helped a lot. I put those on 1 to 2 hours before bed now most nights, and so I still try and don't do like super stimulating stuff like scroll or like watch this crazy like adrenaline pumping movie. But it doesn't really matter that much. Like you still gotta realize that like you have a life, and it's like if you want to watch a sports game at night, you probably just blue light glasses are really good though. They look a little goofy, because they have like the orange tint. But outside of that, it's fine. Not a big deal. Just put them on. No one really is gonna care or clown you. Like you might get clowned on at first, but like at the end of the day, who cares? Doesn't really matter. They're like $40 too. Really good investment, worthwhile. Get a lot of sunlight throughout the day. Be outside, go outside. Be an adventurous, gentleman. Be outdoors. Don't fall for this nonsense that's been pushed on you that like, oh my gosh, you're getting too much sun. It's weird. It's just kind of like, almost twisted because the sun is really good for you. Like human beings naturally, biologically seek out the sun. Everyone's happier when it's sunny out, right? All this, why would the sun be bad for you? You know what I mean? It's just kind of stupid. Don't fall for that nonsense. Be outside, tan, whatever. Don't get like charred or completely burnt. I just got completely burnt. Not terribly, but my torso got pretty burnt up a few days ago. Um, the summer's just starting. I was outside a ton, and I burn, once to begin the summer. It's not a big deal for me. I know it's probably not ideal, but you know, we burn, so it's whatever, right? It's life. Yeah, so for the snack before bed, if you really are hungry, you know, if you're really like, man, you know, I tried to not eat 2 hours before bed, but I'm just, you know, starving. Greek yogurt with peanut butter before bed is a good snack. It's going to be easy to digest. It's not really going to raise your body temp too much because it's not super carb heavy, and fats can even aid in sleep. So that's something to think about if you want to, you know, have something before bed in terms of a meal or food, but it's not going to be too high in, you know, calories. The most important thing, the overarching thing for good sleep is a consistent sleep schedule. Waking up around the same time every day, going to bed around the same time every night. That's the most important thing. I already talked about this before. I'm not going to reiterate too much, but if there's one thing, it's that. Also, make sure your sleep and wake times are realistic. I talked about this before, and they don't stress you out, right? So if you're like, oh man, you know, I need to be out by 8 and I need to be up at 4, this is going to be detrimental for most because realistically, um, you're probably not going to be able to go to bed at 8 p.m. You might still have one or two things to do. And so you're just going to be stressing, you know, you're like, oh, I'm going to bed so early. I don't want to wake up so early tomorrow, like this and that. And you're just overthinking it and you're going to sleep worse because of that. So don't do that. Make sure it's realistic. Make sure it's fit for your life. And the biggest thing is just making sure it's consistent, right? And so those are really all the tips. Yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this little full guide, full full series I'm doing on these full guides. So we're doing aesthetic physique. That was the first one. We're doing sleep. I'm gonna do diet next. And then I'm gonna go into cold exposure as well, which is something I've been really getting into lately. And then I'm gonna kind of culminate it with a full guide, probably in a few weeks, on how to read more and books to read and whatnot. I love reading, so that's gonna be great. And so, yeah, that's gonna do it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you got something out of this video that you can apply. And thanks for watching. As always, guys, God bless.